Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin Conlon, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com.
All right, and we are back. Okay, I just gotta say, if anybody's watching the video, if it looks like I'm crying, I was.
We're laughing,
couldn't stop laughing. We're just gonna save it, but it was just, yeah. Anyways, so if you see that, don't be like, why is Laurin crying about the calories in, calories out episode? Just being ridiculous, as usual, on this podcast. So I am back with Coach Karina.
Hey guys.
And we're being a little silly, like usual.
Silly.
This is why these podcasts are so great. Actually, I just have to say, so on the, we just did our team scholarship, and so on the applicant, it's just like a little, hey, tell us about yourself and how you heard about us and why you want to be on the team. And some of the best feedback was about the podcast, in my opinion, and how everybody was like, I love how I learned something from it, but also like it's not too serious, and here's like have fun with it and whatever. So I'm glad you guys like that.
I would say like that was probably, in terms of like Team LocoFit, like the highlight of 2020 was like just, I really think we killed the podcast, and like we were so consistent with it, and we get a lot of great feedback on it, and so
Dude, changing the format to like everybody, like being more one-on-one, I think just really helped. And I think it's our favorite thing to do to get out information, because it's the way that we like to present information, versus like a short kind of like longer form content is more us. So that's why we write articles every week. That's why we do podcasts every week. It's just us. But yes, anyways, gonna clear my throat from all the crying. That was like 5 minutes. Anyways, so what are we talking about today? It's not just about calories in versus calories out, and this is a heated topic in the industry, to say the least. And this is debated all the time between people, and you're going to hear two camps often. You're going to hear it's all your hormones, it doesn't matter what you're eating. That's one camp. And then the other camp is it's just, you'll hear it as CICO, like calories in, calories out. It doesn't matter what your hormones are doing, it matters how much you're eating.
Or it doesn't matter like what your food looks like.
It just matters how much you're eating. Now, as a broad stroke, I would agree that when people overconsume calories, they're going to run into problems. That is fairly obvious. And people have even done, case studies to where they eat not great food, but they eat little of it, and they do better because they're controlling their weight and they're controlling their body fat. Now, those interventions are not long-term, and not only is that not sustainable, it's not nutrient dense, and it's not going to be something that you're probably going to have good health markers forever with that kind of a diet. But that points to, hey, calories matter most, and to a large degree they do, but there's more. So we're going to kind of go through a few things. First, we're going to go over understanding, kind of breaking down calories in versus calories out, kind of that part of the equation. Then actually understanding, what is your maintenance? Like, what should you be eating on a daily basis? Because oftentimes people use this discussion and they say, it's all about CICO. And it's like, all right, well, a lot of people don't even know where they're at or what they should be doing, or they're not even consistent with what they're doing. So we're going to kind of cover that. And then also we're going to talk about, once all those things are in place, but things are still dysregulated, what should we look at? So first of all, calories in, pretty straightforward. Everything you're eating and drinking. That part of the equation is pretty obvious. I would say the only thing that's not obvious to people is if you're not familiar with tracking or what's in food, you might not be realizing that, the drink that you had, like the coffee drink that you had, was really calorie laden, or the alcoholic drink that you had was really calorie laden,
or the salad that you ordered at a restaurant. It's way more calories than you think it does.
Exactly. So I think oftentimes that part is easy to understand. It's everything that you eat and drink, but people don't necessarily know what's in everything, or they just forget because they'll just mindlessly grab stuff, and then that becomes a habit. We're at the office today. recording this podcast and there's like candy bowls everywhere. It's not like it's like excessive, but it's like, all right, I can just go grab one or two if I want, like a little small one. But if you weren't aware of that, you know, you're doing that every day, not just once, but maybe multiple times a day, or you had it at your desk, right? Like things like that add up really easily, and we kind of forget that we eat them. Yeah. So the calories in part is easy, but you just have to be really aware of, you know, what is actually in stuff.
And if you've been tracking your food for a while, obviously, like, you know this, but for people who are just now getting used to being aware of what they eat or tracking what they eat, don't realize like, oh, this has this many calories. Oh, like I don't even think about tracking this as to my calorie intake because it's like just a condiment or something like that. But all of those things add up.
The salad one is huge, and not just because, so oftentimes it's like the toppings, right? Like it'll be like, hey, there's nuts on it, but it's like fucking candied fucking like pecan or sugar, Or like I always ask for dressing on the side just because I don't really like a lot of dressing on my salad, just because I'm just kind of one of those people. But if you ever see how much they bring you, I'm like, Jesus, like imagine they actually put this on there. I would have been horrified.
Soup at the bottom.
Yeah, but you know, and then depending on the type of dressing you're getting. Yeah. And so there's just a lot of things that are just really hidden that we don't even realize that we're doing. But as far as calories out go, that is a little bit more involved, and that has a lot more fluctuation. So one thing that doesn't really fluctuate obviously is our resting metabolic rate or basal metabolic rate, however you want to look at it, talk about it. But pretty much the same thing. At rest,
we're just do this
having
I'm laying down
bum day. What is your RMR or BMR look like?
How many calories you would need to survive just laying around all day?
So that's going to be one measurement, and then another measurement would be how much NEAT that you're having. So non-exercise activity induced thermogenesis, twitching. We're moving here. When you know both of us are dieting, you know you're just kind of like you can't
sloth. You turn into like you start leaning more. You start sitting more instead of like standing
or moving or even just fidgeting, like all those things.
Walking to the bathroom, just like little movements are considered NEAT.
Yeah, and NEAT is a huge predictor of weight gain over time, actually. There's been some pretty cool studies where they have done overfeeding studies, and basically two groups, or not two groups, but they just overfed people by a certain amount, and you could look at the NEAT of, some people had significantly more, they got more food and they had more NEAT, so they didn't have as much weight gain, and other people had more food and did not increase their NEAT at all, and they gained a lot more weight. So part of it is just kind of like how you adapt to it. So some of that is subconscious, if you're somebody who's just very like moving around doing stuff
we talk
always
with our hands all the time.
Even when I'm like halfway dead, I'm still using my hands, but a little bit less. But like if you're somebody who is always like fidgeting or cleaning stuff or doing whatever, or you're somebody who doesn't do that, you need to actively make yourself have a little bit more activity. Take the stairs, park a little bit farther, force yourself to get this NEAT in. Whereas other people might not have to do that as much. So that's one regulator. And then another thing too is, of course, exercise. That's pretty obvious.
Right.
How much output that you're having as far as exercise goes, whether that's training, cardio, some kind of class, whatever it is, some activity, some output, that's going to be burning calories too. So that's the calories out part, which is just
all of those add up for your total expenditure. And some people don't realize, like, they'll just turn on the little Apple Watch for when they have that one workout session, and they're like, I burned 400 calories, and then they sometimes will slash their calories really low, lower than they need to when they're dieting and things like that. But
also, those things are just not very accurate. So I would say, I would encourage people to not look at calories burned as a way to monitor your intake.
Right, yeah.
In my opinion, I've never found that to be a good correlate. Do I think that the activity trackers can be useful for like baseline activity? Yes.
Yeah. And like if your goal is to increase intensity over time, or like if you're someone who tracks steps, that I consider that tracking NEAT.
Yeah, exactly. So you're seeing, and again, are those 100% accurate? That's debatable, but if you're wearing the same one and you're doing the same things, at least that's consistent. It might not be the most accurate.
Yeah.
But so in any case, that is just calories in, calories out. So if you see CICO, CICO, that's what it is. Now, understanding maintenance, which is a really important part of this. So we're talking about all these things. Okay, well, what should I even be doing, right? And you can look at most people, what they'll do with like an app or a website or whatever, is it's going to be your estimated RMR times an activity factor. And that's going to give you the calories that it recommends. And then, of course, depending on what you're trying to do, that number can be different. Other people have it even more simplified towards like body weight times a certain amount. That is what you should be doing for gaining, losing, maintaining. And they kind of do check out. It's not super personalized, but it is a baseline.
Yeah, at least like for example, like some of the equations use the Harris-Benedict equation. A lot of the RMRs that I've done in the lab, like they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Which if you like would then multiply that by an activity, and that's always subjective too, by the activity factor. You know, you might be more sedentary than you think and all of those things, but yeah, those are pretty close. But
yeah, so if you're going to start with something, you know, if you're just kind of shooting in the dark, that wouldn't be a bad place to look. But what we would actually recommend is just start tracking what you're doing.
And your weight.
Yeah, start tracking your weight, start tracking everything that you're eating and you're drinking. Do that for a week, ideally 2.
But don't change anything.
Yeah, don't change anything. Just literally, hey, I'm living my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to write this down.
Essentially.
That way you can actually see, okay, where am I actually at? Because that's going to be a really important factor in understanding, because that's always going to be personalized to you. So that's what we would recommend as far as like establishing that. And then from there you can see, okay, am I losing weight on this amount? Am I gaining weight on this amount? Am I maintaining weight on this amount? And whatever you start with is never going to be like the perfect number, right? But you can kind of get a baseline idea. And we even do this with clients too. Like, hey, we're going to just start here and then we're going to make some adjustments. And then not only are calories important, but how we break down those macros, of course, are important. So carbs, fats, proteins are going to be important. And that all is just about tinkering it. But really, if you want to figure out where your real maintenance is and where your body is doing the best, you're going to need to do that for several weeks, being consistent and really getting an idea, not just like, hey, I did this for like a week. Like, is this what it is? It's like, it might be.
I would say at minimum, get an average of like 2 weeks of living your life, kind of seeing where your weight lands around how much food you're eating. And yeah, essentially going from there. Minimum 2 weeks, but.
Yeah. And especially if you're new to this, especially if you're not really sure on, if you're somebody who used to track all the time and then you're just getting back into it, maybe you have a better grasp on it.
But if you've never tracked before.
Yeah, you should probably just observe, like that was a really good way of saying it, observe yourself for like 2 weeks. Write down everything. Write down eating, drinking, exercise, whatever. And then you can go from there. And anywhere that you start can be just a building block. But it's really, it is an important part of this equation where people just talk about, it's just about calories, like that narrative, but people don't understand where they should even be for this maintenance.
And to go back for a second, if you are someone who is going to be trying this like observational data collection period for 2 weeks, I think it's super important to also say like fight like hell to fight against the Hawthorne effect, which is like when you're being watched, you perform a little bit differently. Like don't eat any better or don't eat any worse. Like eat how you would normally eat or what you think your body is more so adapted to. But what you're saying is, we can, if it was that easy as, okay, this is my maintenance intake, I'm just going to eat a little less and I'm going to lose weight and that's going to be, there we go, like solve America's obesity problem for most people, but it is not that easy for many people, and I have a handful of clients who can relate that, we tried to cut calories for 10 plus weeks and nothing is working, and then we got some blood work done and then we're like, oh, that's why your metabolism isn't working.
So first and foremost, understanding what is going into the calories in versus calories out equation, understanding your maintenance, and then when that's all regulated and you've been consistent at a maintenance for a while, then it's like, all right, now if you want to make changes, you can from there. But again, everybody in that camp who's being extreme with that would say, well, it just matters, just drop your calories and you'll lose weight.
Yeah.
And that's where we see a lot of those dysregulations, because it's not always that. There's a few factors. One, hormonal factors. Two, mindset and stress, factors, and then also dieting history. So first, easy, low-hanging fruit is going to be hormones. Now, have I looked at people's blood work and seen markers that look good and they're still struggling? Yes. Mm-hmm. Likewise, there could be people who are losing fat quite easily, but their blood markers aren't perfect, right? Of course, there's always going to be these things. But you should always have that as a way, because if you don't test that, and people will say, if you don't test, don't guess, test, or whatever the fuck.
Guess, don't test.
Oh.
No, test, don't guess.
Wait.
I literally wrote it on my story yesterday.
Guess.
Test,
no.
Do not guess. The first time I literally said guess, don't test. Don't listen to that, you guys. Bad advice.
Girls like, just
take
pull some numbers out of there. Test, don't guess. I was a guest. Don't guess. Jesus, we can't do analogies, clearly, guys. You know what we're saying.
Yeah.
Get your fucking blood work done. Just in general, I think that it's to make sure you're staying on top of your health. You want to be proactive with your health, and you want to be preventative with any kind of issues.
Yeah.
And this is not just for your body composition. This has to do with like your overall health. And it's a lot easier to pick things up early on when you have like trends over time. Oftentimes the first time a client gets blood work, a lot of what it's like, well, this is one thing, but we're gonna have to get this done at a later point to know if this is your normal or not.
You are right now.
Yeah. And there's been geez, we're both like really struggling.
I know. It's all that
That's from
like crying earlier.
Okay, why are we like this? Do I have a deficiency for, I don't know, why do I have a laughing gene? I just always laugh at myself. Anyways, and then I start crying. All good. But for blood work, right? Like if you are, say you always kind of trend a little bit higher on a marker, but you know that if you've had blood work done for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
If it's the first time you're doing it, you don't know that.
Yeah, and I essentially we create, I think you said this last time, profiles for clients. Like if I've been working with someone for a while, they have their first blood test done, great. I put it in their little folder in my computer, 3, 4, 5 blood tests down the road. I'm able to kind of look at their progress, look at where they typically read higher, like, also we know that genetically you have high cholesterol, so there's nothing to freak out about there, and things like that. But one thing that is, I think, super helpful for getting actual hormonal panels done, and you're someone who has, you're on paper, you're doing everything right, like calories in, calories out, everything's working fine, but thyroid hormones might be out of whack, and it doesn't matter how perfect you are on tracking your numbers and calories if your endocrinology is not working. That doesn't matter, which is so frustrating. And if you go months without understanding that, you are spinning your wheels, likely making even more negative metabolic adaptations with continuing to cut your calories and doing more cardio. Making sure that hormones are in a good place is going to be key. And sometimes you just don't know that they might not be in a good place. So that'll be our third point, just knowing if you're someone who has had a long dieting history, or I've had incidents with clients who have had some pretty bad coaches that put them on stuff that we don't even know what it was really. And so, just getting blood work done, we harp on all the time, but it has a whole host of benefits in understanding your body and what you need to do to get it to a better place.
And oftentimes, a lot of these things go together. So if your thyroid is off, there might be something else that's off too, and they, are all in kind of unison. But if you're not addressing it, you're not going to be able to fix it. So if you can get this through your doctor, that's great. It's not usually the doctors that are the problem. It's the insurance that won't run full panels. And the most frustrating thing is when somebody finally goes, I finally got a script, and they have T4, LH, FSH, and estrogen, and they're like, that's it, right? And I'm like, no.
We need
we need a lot of other things. Yeah. So your CBC is great, but I need way more than that to like, you know, for you to have a full understanding. So the one that we recommend,
at least for what we do.
Yeah, for most people, I would say this is a really good baseline place to start. It has a lot of the markers that we would recommend. It's called the Comprehensive Weight Loss Panel from Life Extension. Again, I did not come up with that name. Every time I post that, people are like, there's no weight loss blood pressure. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't make this up.
We don't know why it's called that.
They
I just like
that.
The combo of
Exactly.
like,
it tests all the thyroid hormones, it tests all the sex hormones, it tests cortisol, it tests vitamin D, it has a full CBC, a full CMP, and anything else on there? So all the insulin related markers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has
lipids.
Yeah, that's in the CMP. But yeah, literally it is for a baseline like health, body composition, optimizing thing. It's a really good place to start. And what we do like about Life Extension as well, obviously it is out of pocket, but you get your blood work done at LabCorp. You get a report within the week, generally speaking. And then what's great about it too is that they have an awesome group of people who work there.
That's my favorite part about it.
Yeah, and they can recommend stuff, and obviously if it's out of their scope, you know, they can recommend you to somebody else, or you can go to an endocrinologist. But it's just a really good way, again, to be proactive with your health, and even if everything's good to go, hey, get it done. Hey, great, everything's good, and then we move forward. Now, if something was off, you can always go back. What is cool about them too is that you can get individual tests. So in the last podcast we did about supplements. So for example, vitamin D, you know, sometimes you have to do some trial and error to figure out what is the right amount for you. So say you get your vitamin D tested in January, and then you start, okay, I'm going to start supplementing with 5,000 IUs. Then you get it done in 3 or 4 months. Now you can see, was that amount right? And you can just order vitamin D.
Yeah,
you don't have to order the whole other
like
panel.
$30, $40 maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why we recommend going there. I know there's other companies too, but I find that they are a really well-priced company, and they have very educated people who work there, which makes me feel comfortable sending our clients there.
Yeah, one of their staff also like wrote an article for us on cortisol. It's a great article. I recommend going to the website and like stress perception and things like that. So.
Which is a good segue. That's our next part. If things are dysregulated, one of the big things is going to be your mindset and your stress perception in general. So if you're somebody who, you know, has been killing your maintenance phase, got everything in a really good spot, but your mindset is trash around dieting, around your body, or life is, you know, shit is hitting the fan, like everything's going crazy around you. These are going to be things that we need to consider with your progress. You know, I have some clients who are in very, very stressful work environments, just based on what they do, particularly in the medical community and within school and kind of all that. And, you know, it's like, listen, we're going to see progress. It just might take twice as long.
Yeah.
And that's really, really frustrating for people to hear. But I'm like, listen, if we weren't being proactive here, you would be going the other way.
Backwards, yeah.
So if we can even inch a little bit forward, this is exciting.
Yeah.
It's slow, but it's exciting.
Yeah.
Whereas if you weren't being on top of this, you would easily be going the other way.
Yeah.
So I think that just you have to take that into consideration too. You know, are you in a new high stress situation? Is there a lot of stuff going on with your family, or, you know, you personally?
Yeah.
Do you have a trash mindset around your body and around dieting? You know, is there some other unresolved things that you need to be working on with a therapist? Like, those are all things that will 100% influence your body's response to dieting. Because if you don't feel like safe and comfortable in your own body, why would it be like, yeah, good time to lose body fat? Like, it's just like protection mode. Like, if you're chronically sympathetic, it's not good.
Yeah,
I think we can all relate to times in our lives when we feel like we've been kind of on point with our diet, but everything else is out of whack.
Absolutely. And I remember like literally barely eating, but just being in a really stressful and like low time in my life, and just being like the heaviest, constantly inflamed, like always having like sciatica, flare-ups, but like literally barely eating.
Yeah.
And that's when I felt like the least healthy ever. But yeah, like stress perception and mindset goes such a long way, because, you know, if your body physiologically is going to respond to these high stress perceptions that we perceive. It's really redundant, but yeah. And so also cortisol has been shown to be directly linked to insulin resistance in some cases. So that's kind of like a bit more like pinpointed reason. But in general, I have seen in myself personally and in a lot of clients, those who have are living in higher stress situations might have a bit of a harder time, but it's trying to stay on top of your perception within those stressful circumstances, because life is going to be stressful. I'm sorry to tell you that you're not going to go throughout life without going through some pretty shitty times, but how you perceive those times and how you move forward through those times is absolutely in your control and your responsibility. And when we can work on that mindset shift, sometimes that's all we need. And to start seeing progress.
Yeah, and it's not about judging the client's stress level, right? Because we've talked about this with the podcasts. I've done this with Rick, where everybody has a different, me and you could go through the same situation and we perceive it very differently, right? So you can't be like, hey, you're not really, nothing's really bad going on, nothing bad in your life really going on. You need to not be stressed out about that. Yeah, that's not useful. But we can, open clients' eyes, hey, you stressing over this situation is making this worse.
Yeah.
And what often happens with a lot of people that we work with is they, if you want to see progress right away and then you're not, then you create stress over that. And then that stress actually inhibits your progress forward.
Yeah.
And then it's this cycle. And that's generally what happens with a lot of people, not just our clients, but just people in general. They want things to work really quickly. We all want things to work really quickly.
Yeah.
So when it's not, then we're it's not working.
It adds on top of that. And how I essentially will coach through those situations is definitely not judging how a client perceives something. I oftentimes am I have a client who works in a very high stress situation. I'm I don't know how you do it. I would have breakdowns all the time. But you are strong enough to get to this point. You've made so much progress already. I definitely think that this is something that you can handle. And it's just corny, but a little bit of encouragement goes a long way as a coach.
Oh, for sure.
Believe me, you got this. I believe in you. You can do this. And sometimes just that change in perception can go a long way.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it ad nauseum, but one of my favorite books that I read last year was called The Upside of Stress, and I think that it was probably the best representation of the stress literature that I've ever read, because I feel most books in that space are all about, you don't need to have stress, be stress-free, be happy all the time, no.
Some stress is good. It's just
stress, and that is the whole
stronger
crux of the book, is that stress is not the problem. It's how we perceive that stress. And we're constantly bombarded with stress is going to kill you, stress is going to be a heart attack. It's actually no. It's the type of stress that you're having and how you're perceiving that stress. We need stress in our lives. That is okay. It's not that problem. It's how we're looking at it. Is this a positive thing? Is this a challenge? Or are we being defeated and debilitated by it? So cannot recommend enough. I know I talk about it all the time, but go read that book. And then lastly, things that can be dysregulated with, not just calories in, calories out, is dieting history. And this is probably the most profound thing that I see with our clients, and I've just seen over the past many, many years, is the people who have longer dieting histories are going to struggle more to lose fat. There is just no way around it. And I don't have a direct correlate, a number or anything like that, but if you've been dieting off and on for most of your life, it's not just gonna fall off this time just because you took 3 months to build your calories up. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean we can't see progress, but if we've been doing something for a really, really long time, it's not just as straightforward as let's cut 500 calories out and you'll just start dropping weight like that.
Right. Well, because the amount of time you spend dieting is essentially the amount of time you also suppress muscle protein synthesis. You kind of limit yourself to building more muscle, which when you lose muscle mass, that's a good way to slow down metabolism. And so we see a lot of yo-yo dieters or people who can't stop restricting calories or can't stop jumping on the next diet and never allowing themselves time to optimize metabolism by letting their metabolism adapt to a higher intake. And when you're just spending so much time in what I like to think of as chronic adaptive thermogenesis, because the term adaptive thermogenesis can be acute, right? So if after this I go have a burger, my RMR, my metabolic rate is gonna spike up because I'm eating a lot, or it's gonna spike up when I'm exercising. But when your body has gone through such a long period of time, years of not eating enough, not eating enough to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, or, you know, going through a period where you lose some muscle mass, you know, that's definitely going to slow down metabolism, and that can be really hard to build back up for some people.
Mm-hmm. And everybody sit very differently with this, which is the really, really hard part about it as a coach, because there are some people that I've worked with who have very resilient metabolisms, and other people, I meant that in a more negative way. Like they're in a positive way. They're resilient. Like they can go through dieting cycles, and their metabolism is resilient, and it's still thriving.
Nice. Oh, I wish.
And then there's other people who are a lot more adaptive to where they might have 1 or 2 really rough diet cycles, and for years afterwards they're struggling.
The metabolism of a cockroach over here.
Yeah. So it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you could take, again, the same exact situation. So we talked about before, the same situation, and 2 people are going to perceive it differently. You can put 2 people through the exact same dieting, you know, take 5 years of diet history, the same, 2 different people, and they're going to respond differently once you finally get them to this like stable place. Some people, things stabilize and then they're great. Other people, it's not so quick. Right. So that is really hard, because it sounds like woo-woo, voodoo, I don't know how long it's going to take for your body to be, like, people are like, what the fuck? Like, it's just calories in, calories out, isn't it? And you're like,
not really.
Not always.
Yeah.
You know, for some people, and those people are the poster children for that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like anything. You know, anybody who's seen extreme success with anything, like, they're the poster child for that. Like,
and I think also, too, like, one thing people don't consider is age. Like, you see a lot of like these poster children for just calories in versus calories out, or like young 20-year-olds who have never dieted. Now, I'm definitely a 20-year-old young person, but I've been dieting since I was 13. Like, you know, it's a deeper issue since I was a kid. And so, you know, I obviously like now look back, and when I have a daughter one day, I'm gonna be like, you are not dieting until, you know, you need to, but we're focusing on building muscle, and that's it.
Get fucking jacked and get out of my house.
Yeah, exactly. But,
boot camp.
Yeah, literally. Have an entire room just for weights.
Literally. But yeah, so those would be the 3 main things that we would see that are dysregulated with clients. Yes, calories in, calories out is if we had to just paint one broad stroke to say what's the most important thing, that would be it. I would probably say with enough protein, right? Like making sure that your calories are in check and eating enough protein is probably the best recommendation that you can give to anybody, and that's going to affect the most people positively. But within that, you then need to figure out, okay, what is actually my maintenance? What should I actually be doing here? Like, you know, and then from there, if after you've been maintaining for a little while and you cut some calories and you're, why am I not responding? Well, these 3 reasons are probably why things are dysregulated. Some hormones, or a lot of them in concert with each other, could be off, so get blood work done. Making sure that your mindset and your stress reception is in check, because that has a huge impact on your results as well. And then lastly, taking into account your diet history and understanding, are you a more stubborn responder? Are you more adaptive, or are you more resilient to these kinds of things? So those would be our top reasons why it's not just about calories in versus calories out. And while that is part of the equation, look a little deeper. And is that all we have?
Yeah, I think so.
The tears have dried on my face, so hopefully everybody on the video could not see
recovered.
this. Wow, that was pretty funny. Why are we like this? But if you guys have any other questions, you can always reach out to us on our website, teamlocofit.com. On the website, you can also see the articles that we've written, check out the other podcasts, and apply for coaching as well. So we will catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Wow, I just tried to sing that. Okay.